Welcome back to the Sovereign Ratio. Sam Bankman Fried gets 25 years in prison for the collapse of FTX. I want to look at this today and give you some thoughts that I have, and also my history with the event as lived through it myself, and also one warning sign that I received from an unlikely person that actually helped me out in not putting any funds on FTX and actually helping somebody remove funds from FTX right before the collapse. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave me a comment below, and follow me on X. So to start off, I want to say in 2022, when I was trying to promote Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to coworkers and friends, one of the exchanges that I said was trustworthy was FTX or Coinbase. And I told people that if you want to go to Coinbase, you're probably going to have more regulation. If you go to FTX, this was at the time, of course. If you go to FTX, you probably will have a little bit less regulation. But FTX had a Super Bowl ad, and they are predicted to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, cryptocurrency exchanges in the United States. Well, actually, my CEO of where I work, I believe, he never confirmed, but I believe put money on that exchange to buy Bitcoin. I was telling him to buy Bitcoin around 14K. It didn't quite get there, but I think he had funds on there. And I remember at the time I was still watching, Bitboy Crypto occasionally, and week to week you would hear Ben continually talk bad about SBF. He continued to heighten his stance and heighten his stance and heighten his stance as time went on, that SBF was a criminal and was going to be arrested for different things. Now, he didn't give specific reasons because it was classified, or maybe he didn't really know what they were. But the fact of the matter was, it echoed enough within me for me not to put money on FTX, and also to warn my CEO that he should probably remove any funds that he has on FTX, just because there'd been so much bad news and slander going about the exchange. So thankfully, I told him that a week, I don't know what he did. I don't know if he had funds. I don't know if he pulled the funds off. But about a week before that actually collapsed is when I told him. So I'm pretty sure he's safe. I'm pretty sure he got his funds off. But believe it or not, the unknown agent here is Bitboy Crypto. I'm not a huge Bitboy Crypto fan by any stretch of the imagination. He only did two good things. One was warn people about SBF, and two was to have Piano Matty B for his Bitboy Crypto Morning TA segments. But other than that, not somewhere you would expect for me to get actually information that turned out to be good information. Whether he actually knew all the details or not, it still worked out.
Just give us the TLDR. How did this all start with Sam? Because you've been really, I would say, on this crusade now for weeks, if not months, but certainly publicly for about 2 months. Obviously, more talking about the DeFi bill and not an FTX collapse at that time. But talk about how this started.
Yeah, well, talking about the DeFi bill is really where things started unfolding to another level, to where I did get wind of what FTX was doing on the backside. And we had already been working with reporters to tell this story. But then in the midst of it, CZ hits the red button, from the meme, he hits the red button, the trigger button, and everything, went much quicker than we were expecting. I didn't know if Sam was a good guy or bad guy. I've always been kind of, and if people watch my channel, certainly, people know I've made fun of his hair a lot, the bad-haired billionaire, I say. I didn't know if he was a good guy or bad guy. And I've always said that on the show. Like, I can't quite put my finger on who this guy is. And so what happens is we go to FTX for funding for our bill through a third party, through one of my good friends who also is an intermediary between Sam and Tim Harrison.
Yeah, Brett.
Oh, Brett. Yeah, Brett Harrison. Who's Tim Harrison? I don't even know who that is. Brett Harrison, of course. Yeah, Brett Harrison. So anyways, the point is we went to them and we're asking them for funding for the bill. Tim Harrison responds and says, "Oh, you know what? We'd really like to take a look at this." And at that moment, I'm like, wait a second. You're telling me SBF is trying to create a federal bit license, like the worst piece of crypto regulation in history? And so about 2 weeks later, I came out and I made a video on this federal bit license and what they were trying to do. And everybody thought I was crazy. They made fun of me. Sam even specifically said, that's not what we're doing, blah, 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 blah. And so, I make a full video on exactly what it is. Well, the next day after I made the video, Brett Harrison steps down from FTX. Right. The very next day. So he's the person who ultimately connected us, that got all this information out. So I think he was fired personally. And I think it was probably a good move for him to move away before everything unfolded.
So that was a couple minutes of Bitboy talking on the Wolf of Wall Street's podcast or YouTube channel. And the reason that I put that 2 minutes up there is because while I heavily edited that 2 minutes, because Bitboy tends to be long-winded, I wanted you to see that he actually did have some information somehow of some of the back workings of FTX. Obviously not all of it, not the Alameda stuff, not a lot of the financial stuff, but he had some hints, I suppose. And also one of the FTX employees that he was connected with quitting literally the next day after what he was talking about. So that was enough warning for me. Actually, that video was taken after the collapse, but the warnings that he was giving like that on his channel prior to the collapse actually were of benefit to me and obviously other people. So first, I want to say on the chart here, this is the FTX collapse. If this is your first cycle and you weren't around back then, this was the effect of the FTX collapse. We had already seen the UST collapse. We had already seen the war on Ukraine start. And now we have the FTX dump, which was the final 28% dump, down to around $15,500. While I've got the chart up, as I mentioned yesterday, we talked about Bitcoin cost of production. If I throw that on there, check this out. That is almost exactly where the final dump led to, was the Bitcoin cost of production. This bottom line here is the cost of electricity used to mine one Bitcoin, and that's exactly where the bottom was. So going forward, as I stated yesterday, I picked this actually up from the Eric Crown Crypto channel, and I'm now going to implement it into my own TA after learning about it. I think this is an excellent way to find bottoms because Bitcoin never goes beyond its electrical cost of production for any length of time. You can see it wicked below it for a couple of days, but there was absolutely no way that it wasn't going to hold there, and it always has in the past, held that line. The good news from all of this is that FTX at least intends to pay its customers and creditors back in full. Whether that actually happens or not, we don't know, because if you think about it, at the end of the FTX collapse, Solana was at $8 and now it's at almost $200. That's a big change. So in order to credit someone for the current price of a previously lost asset, that is a tremendous amount of gain that Solana's had. I don't know if those Solana are sitting in reserves to where they could just be transmitted to the individual's wallet, or if this is going to be like a USDC, USDT type of deal. Maybe I need to do some more research into that. But either way, my opinion is that is an extremely inflated Solana from the point that it was whenever FTX collapsed. Either way, it's good that at least some attempts are being made here to repay customers, and I'm sure that's going to have a lot of smiling faces as we enter this next bull run. One theory that I can actually subscribe to that happened in December of 2022, as presented by Mark Yusko, is that SBF was literally a pawn used in a bigger conspiracy to punish the crypto industry. And I could definitely see that with the state of the United States economy right now and the way that the leaders of the current administration are treating cryptocurrency and digital assets. There's been a big problem for a long time with regulation, and we have seen so many bad things and just crap things from the SEC over the last couple of years that it doesn't surprise me that this theory exists. And quite frankly, when I look at somebody like SBF, I see somebody who has some genius level qualities in some regards, but in other regards like common sense, social cues, political savvy, this is not the individual that has genius in those areas. So I could easily see somebody with the savvy in those areas using SBF as a pawn to do some sort of malicious activity that will probably never be found out by anybody. But to me, SBF was just too much of a, I'm going to use the word nerd, to be able to have pulled that many strings to make that kind of thing happen. Now, is he guilty of misappropriating customer funds? Absolutely. But I think there's something bigger at play. I don't know if it's going to pan out in the future. I don't know if it's already planned out, but this is just my opinion. The man does not have the social and political ability to make this happen to the extent that it has. Here's the good news. At least for now, we can finally put this chapter behind us and look forward. Obviously, this has been an amazing year for Bitcoin, breaking previous all-time highs prior to the halving, currently retesting the Pi cycle long moving average with a definitive break above that on the weekly chart, would yield incredible bullishness in the market and would probably make altcoins absolutely start to skyrocket. Actually, right now, we're starting to see Dogecoin skyrocket, which interestingly enough would be a good case for altcoins to take off. And the reason for that is because so many people aped into Dogecoin back here at the top at like 74, 75 cents, and they're probably trapped, right? Like a lot of people that were new to the crypto space, they heard about it, they came in, they bought Dogecoin, they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy this Dogecoin or whatever and make a ton of money. Those are the people that got trapped up here at 75 cents. So the fact that Dogecoin has started to rip again is actually a decent sign that we may see an altcoin run, right? it's a rally of 239% to get back to 74%, but that being 74 cents, I should say. That being said, the fact that Dogecoin is moving is a pretty positive sign for the altcoins. The other thing that I want to note is that I used to think that ETH BTC pair was the #1 indicator of when the altcoin market was going to run. However, everybody pretty much unanimously agrees that the 3 big players now are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana is now #3. So for me, Solana is now more indicative of the entire altcoin market in general. If we go to that and look at the Sol BTC pair, you can see that it has broken many key levels, like here at 0.00178. It actually broke through that, bounced off of it, and held it. Also held the bull market support band, also held the short EMA, and is now retesting the long MA, which if Solana keeps moving from here, we could see like $1,000 Solana. For me, for the whole market though, despite how I feel about that, despite what I think altcoins could potentially be doing right now, the #1 thing, and I will reiterate this until it breaks, is that Bitcoin needs to absolutely break definitively on a 1-week chart, not just a peekaboo. It needs to definitively break the Bitcoin high long moving average, currently sitting at $72,950. There needs to be a candle close above that, because every time that's happened, it's been a raging bull market for at least a year after that. Now, that being said, generally the first time that Bitcoin tests this long moving average on the Pi cycle indicator in the past, now we know this cycle is fundamentally different so far, but in the past, every time Bitcoin has tested this long moving average for the first time prior to the halving, it has rejected and corrected a minimum of 40%. So for me, if Bitcoin ends up breaking this long moving average prior to the halving on a weekly close, I'm dumping the rest of my dry powder in, and I'm going to take a seat on the back patio and play with the dogs for about a year until we finally get to a point where I'm probably 10 times richer. That being said, I need to see that first, and I would encourage anyone who has a conservative and more risk-averse mindset to consider adopting a similar stance. Obviously not financial advice. Before we bring it close to the video and part ways, please do make sure and head over to X and follow me at the Sovereign Ratio. We'll see you in the next video, and safe trading.